From the Altai to the White Sea, the lands where Kazakh people rode their horses, the historical expedition will follow the footsteps of ancestors. The 3-year journey was set out to the west. Kazakh traveler of the 21st century, Sapari Skakov and his team have visited more than 20 countries in 70 days. A wonderful story of the great journey is featured in our program, In the Footsteps of Ancestors. Today's Following the Footsteps of Ancestors program presents: what heritage has the Dashta Kipchak left in the world culture and civilization? What history do 28 books stored in the Central State Historical Archives of Ukraine tell in the Kipchak language? Is it true that the inhabitants of Kiev spoke the Turkic language in the 9th century? The heirs of the Great Steppe should not forget their history. Of course, it is easy to talk about this, but it is not easy to do. The scientific expedition following the footsteps of ancestors decided to act. Scientists have visited many countries collecting history a little bit at a time. However, there is still a long way to go and many things to explore. The scientific motor fleet continues its journey through Ukraine. The next stop after Kamenets-Podolsk is Kiev. Local archives keep enough medieval manuscripts telling about Kipchak history. For example, the Central State Historical Archives of Ukraine has preserved 28 books in the Kipchak language. In general, ordinary visitors do not have access to them. However, the participants of the Kazakhstan expedition were allowed to look at the ancient books.
На сегодняшний день этими книгами занимался и занимается горковец Александр Николаевич.
Today, Kazakh scientist, Turkologist Alexander Nikolaevich Garkovets studies these ancient books. Unfortunately, he does not have students who could continue his work. I encourage young scientists to pay attention to these unique books and study them. This knowledge can be a great contribution to the history of Kazakhstan.
Какие-то ученые, я так думаю, что в последующем приедут, будут изучать.
The Kipchaks lived in a vast territory from the Altai to the White Sea. Therefore, they were called Polovets or Cuman. The ancestors who lived in Armenia and in Ukraine were called Armenian Kipchaks. They left a rich heritage to the descendants, including these unique 28 books. It will be wrong to call them Armenian monuments in the Kipchak language. As evidenced by historical documents, the authors of these books were our ancestors. To prove this scientifically, Kazakh scientists have arrived in Kiev.
Наш архив был создан в 1852 году, предшественник нашего архива.
The archive was opened in 1852. In the same year, documents of Ukrainian state agencies and judicial institutions were transferred to the fund. There were books and manuscripts in the Kipchak language brought from the city of Kamenets-Podolsk. I think that today we have the largest fund of manuscripts in the Kipchak language, which make it possible to study the history of the Armenian Kipchaks. The archive now stores 28 books. The books delivered to the State Central Historical Archive of Ukraine from Kamenetsk, Podolsk, and Lvov mostly tell about judicial proceedings, including ones describing procedure for the sale and lease of land. Apparently, these books specify basic law of the Kipchak state. In general, one can find many historical documents relating to Kazakh history on the Ukrainian land, particularly in the field of law, philology, culture, and fiction. All this, of course, will help to reveal the white spots in history.
Кипчакский язык в свое время служил языком межэтнического общения для половцев, для тюркоязычных народов.
The Kipchak language was once an international language. Therefore, many documents were written in this language. Nowhere in the world are there as many manuscripts in the Kipchak language as in our archive. In general, the number of books should be more than 28. Back in 1952, over 32 books were handed to our archive. During the Second World War, all books were taken away by the Germans. After the war, only 28 out of 32 books were returned.
После того, как многие актовые книги нашего архива были вывезены немцами, возвратилось только 28.
Even 7 years ago, while exploring Kipchak manuscripts, Turkologist Alexander Nikolaevich Garkovets said that approximately 30,000 pages of Armenian Kipchak texts were published in the Ukrainian cities of Lvov and Kamenets-Podolsk, as well as in Poland and Romania, and they are different in content. Of course, it is challenging to study all this information. It is necessary to make comprehensive research. Therefore, scientists intend to include these valuable books in the UNESCO World Heritage List. The State Historical Archive of Ukraine relies on Kazakhstan in this matter. The head of the expedition, Sapar Iskakov, noted that 8 more books in the Kipchak language, which are stored in the Matenadaran Scientific Research Institute of Ancient Manuscripts in Armenia, should also be added to the World Heritage List.
В 2013 году по договору.
Unfortunately, few specialists are now able to understand and translate these books. In 2013, an agreement was signed with the International Turkic Academy. The content of all 28 books has been translated in digital format and sent to Astana scientists for study.
Казахским ученым в Астану.
In the 9th, 15th centuries, the Kipchak language was quite common in the world, just as now it is the English language. The Kipchak language served as a connecting language between Europe and Asia. All important books, including the Bible, were translated into this language. Scholars of the Institute of the Oriental Studies of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine believe that traders of that time should have known the Persian and the Kipchak languages. The Kipchak language dictionary Codex Cumanicus, written in the 13th century in the Crimea, proves it. The book, consisting of 164 sheets, was published in Venice in 3 languages: Kipchak, Latin, and Persian. A valuable exhibit was kept in the Church of St. Peter. In 1362, the outstanding Renaissance poet Francesco Petrarca presented the book as a gift to the Venice Library. According to the scientists, the book, containing interesting information for both philologists and historians, was written by the Venetian merchants.
Мен қазір міне осы қолымда ұстап отырмын сол Кодекс Куманикстың көшірмесін. Бұнда 3 тілде жазылған.
I hold a copy of the Codex Cumanicus. It includes Kipchak, Latin, and Persian scripts. For example, the word bread is translated into Kipchak as nan. There are also translations into Latin and Persian. There are translations of words in 3 languages. The first page of the book shows the date, 2004. This is the year when the book first appeared.
Бірінші, мұнда біздің көретініміз кітаптың бас жағында 1204 деп жазылып тұр. Бұл кітаптың бірінші құрастырылған уақыты.
It is easy to find similarities between Kipchak set expressions and Kazakh ones. For example, one of the Kipchak manuscripts written in Armenian letters in the work Dana Hikar features the expression translated as "Listen, my son, to the command of your God." In the Kipchak, it sounds as "Ogum Tanirinin Bayruhuna Daime Hulahoy." In the Kazakh language, it sounds as "Ulim Tarininin Boyrigana Daim Kolakhoy." A similar wording there is Kolakhoy. Those who read the Codex Cumanicus note the similarity between the Kipchak language and Latin, citing specific examples. That is, the current transition of the Kazakh alphabet from Cyrillic script to the Latin is not accidental. The explanations lay in the depths of history. After all, the Kazakh language originated from the ancient Kipchak. In general, the Kipchak state had a serious impact on the entire world civilization and culture during its formation and development. This is especially true in the case of Ukraine.
Очень большую роль в формировании государства Киевской Руси в свое время.
No doubt, Kipchaks played an important role in the formation of Ukraine as a state. Many Turkic peoples who were once neighbors were assimilated by the Ukrainians. Therefore, modern-day Ukrainians may well be the descendants of the Kipchaks.
Нашими соседями тюрки как были, так и остались.
The Ukrainian National Academy of Sciences conducted an anthropological study between 1956 and 1963. As a result, it turned out that 75% of the rural population of Ukraine has facial features, hair color, and other signs inherited from the Turkic ancestors. Several historical factors can serve this cause. Once upon a time, many peoples sought to establish kinship relations with the Kipchaks to ensure the support of a militant country in defense against enemies. For example, the renowned Prince of Kiev and Rus, Vladimir Monomach, signed 19 peace agreements with the Kipchaks. Many Russian princes, knyaz, married Kipchak women. According to scientists, the mother of the famous commander Alexander Nevsky was a Kipchak woman. Ayats, quotes, from the Quran were inscribed in gold letters on the helmet of Alexander Nevsky. The rulers of the Golden Horde presented this gift made by the masters of Sarai Batu. The scientists found out 13 quotes from Surah al-Sah on the helmet, which mean, "And yet another blessing which you love, help from Allah, and a speedy victory. So, O Prophet, give this good news to the believers."
Кипчаки отметились с 11 столетия, и, соответственно...
There were not only military, political, but also kin relations between the indigenous peoples and the Kipchaks. Local rulers married their sons and daughters to Kipchak girls and warriors. Such ties were established at least between 10 dynasties known from both sides. One more fact confirms the kinship between Ukrainians and Kazakhs. Ukrainians may belong to one of the branches of the Turks, according to the opinion of historian Murad Adji. His book about the Kipchaks describes Kiev inhabitants who spoke the Turkic language in the 9th century. The word Kiev, in translation from Turkic, means son-in-law, or rather, city of the son-in-law. The Slavic dictionaries do not have the meaning of this word. The city was founded approximately in the 5th century by the Turks Kipchaks. Originally, the city was called Bashtau. The rulers were called Khagans. Exactly the same title was held by the rulers of neighboring Khaganates, Avaria, Bulgaria, Khazaria, and Siberia. All of them were dependent on Dashta Kipchak. According to the scholar Murad Adji, the history of the Kipchak state begins not from the 11th century, but from the 4th century. That is, Kievan Rus appeared in the Kipchak steppe.
50 мыңға тақау халқы болған. Днепрдің екі жағын алып жатты. Ол кезінде Европада да үлкен қалалар онша болған жоқ. Сол кезінде мысалы
Approximately 50,000 people lived in ancient Kiev. The city is located on both sides of the Dnieper River. Then there were very large cities in Europe. For example, London had only 20,000 inhabitants. Paris, with a population of 100,000 people, was the largest city in Europe. That is, Kiev, with 50,000 residents, was an average city by medieval standards.
Ол әрине сол кезге қараған уақытында ол енді орташа қала, мүмкін даже үлкен қала деп болуы мүмкін.
Great Kipchaks, the ancestors of the Kazakhs, played a significant role in the European politics. For example, the most authoritative tribes in the Crimean Khanate were Kipchaks, Argans, Barons, and Mansours. After the annexation of the Khanate in the Russian Empire, the first noble ranks were given to the Kipchak Khans.
В отличие от других бейских родов, в отличие от Аргин, Ширин, от Аргинов, Ширинов, Мансуров,
Among the authoritative tribes, the Kipchaks were given special attention. They were awarded the highest titles. The Kipchaks were competent in politics. They actively participated in the discussion of various issues and could influence the decision-making process.
губернском правлении, они принимали активное участие в дворянском собрании.
The next stop of the following, the Footsteps of Ancestors scientific expedition in Kiev's museum, which saves many valuable exhibits, confirming some opinions and assumptions of scientists. Archaeological finds dating from 12th, 13th centuries are among them. They were discovered in the 80s of the last century in the Zaporozhye region.
Сделаны из драгоценных металлов, серебро, золото. Вот, и это украшения.
Many items made from precious stones, silver and gold, were found during the excavations at the Shinkol Mound. Archaeologists also found a warrior's dagger and fragments of horse harness. Apparently, a man belonging to the Khan's family was buried in the tomb. Studies continue.
Налучья, боевые ножи, детали украшения лошади.
Nearly 3,000 ancient burials were found in the Ukrainian steppe. Almost 500 of them belonged to the Kipchaks. Many warriors were buried with weapons and items of everyday life. Other tombs featured a Turkic musical instrument, kobis, along with the warrior and weapons.
Погребение музыканта с кобызом. Сохранился смычковой инструмент кобыз, он фактически полностью...
We found kobis and a warrior in the burial discovered in the Lugansk region. Archaeologists have dated the burial approximately to the 12th century. The instrument is well preserved. It was not difficult to separate it from the soil and sand. The burial has a direct connection with the military campaign at the beginning of the 12th century by the Prince of Kievan Rus Vladimir Monomach. It was during that period when the Kipchaks led by Artek Khan left the steppes of the northern Donets to Georgia to assist Georgian King David IV in military affairs. Artek Khan stayed there for about 7 years. People from his homeland sent a man skillfully playing kobis with a bag of wormwood to return the Khan back home. He performed a native melody in front of Artek Khan, and the Kipchaks returned home thanks to his emotional performance. Earlier, a group of scientists led by archaeologist Zainullah Samashev found kobis dating from the 7th century in Altai. The burial contained the remains of Kipchak warrior, his weapon, and kobis. This musical instrument is mainly associated with shamanism. Interestingly, there were many shamans among the Kipchaks who worshipped the god Tengri. During the campaigns, they always accompanied the warriors. The lines from the poem by Magjan Zhumabayev speak about this. Once I woke up from a nightmare and cut out kobis from a piece of birch. I strung a horsehair and it produced a sweet sound. Throughout the Altai, the words of poets became prophetic. Kobis, found in Altai, is considered the oldest. The instrument has been completely restored. Famous kobis player Alquat Kazakbayev glorified its unique sound throughout the world. The head of the scientific expedition following the footsteps of ancestor Sapari Skakov presented an exact copy of the ancient instrument as a gift to the Pope during his trip to the Vatican. Our ancestors left a big mark in the art of music. Along with the kobis found in the Altai, a valuable legacy left by the ancestors is the music text of an anthem written in the Kipchak language in the Codex Cumanicus book. In 2015, at the initiative of Kazakhstan, the first updated anthem was performed in the concert hall of the Tilep Kobis Palace in Astana. At the World Festival, the Kok Turikter ensemble performed an ancient Kipchak anthem in a new way.
Кім ойлайды сол уақытында
Who thought that our ancestors living in distant times would leave such music text? Our ancestors sang such anthems 800 years ago.
800 жыл бұрын біздің бабаларымыз осындай гимн айтқан.
In western Ukraine, songs and legends of indigenous peoples mention the names of the Kipchak Khans Boynak, Togurhan, and Sarikhan, who lived in the 11th and 12th centuries. They became famous for their courage in battles and left their mark in the history of Ukraine. People in this region also mention the name of Artek Khan's son, Konchak, who lived in the 12th century. During his reign, the Kipchak Khanate, especially the army, became stronger. In 1185, the Kipchaks conquered the Novgorod-Seversky and Chernigov princedoms in the battle at the Kayala River, having defeated the Russians. This event formed the basis of the legend, the tale of Igor's campaign. Such historical moments once again confirm the historical connection between Ukrainians and Kazakhs. Research work in this direction will be continued. To mark this work, the research center Dashta Kipchak was opened in Astana's palace, Tilep Kobis, with the help of the fund of the first Kazakh Minister of Defense, Sagadat Nurmagomedov, in 2017. The center aims at forming a unified scientific space for uniting the Turkic world. The Following the Footsteps of Ancestors scientific expedition has successfully completed its journey across Ukraine and is now leaving for Belarus, where scientists will face many interesting and informative findings.